Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation. During this session, I'm going to talk about server-side Swift development using Feather CMS. First of all, let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Tibor Bödecs. I'm originally a backend developer. Back in the old days, when PHP 5 came out, we've created an object-oriented content management system with my friend. It was called Entropy Framework, and we were using it for many years to deliver websites and complex web portals. Eventually, I've got bored of building web pages using PHP and started to learn how to create iOS apps instead. This was about 10 years ago. After a few years, I became the CTO of one of the biggest mobile app development companies in Hungary. We were building event-related apps for international clients. For example, we've created many open day apps for universities in the Netherlands. We've also made internal conference apps for Fortune 500 companies, event guide apps, and for almost every big Hungarian festival. When this company started to move away from mobile development projects, I started to establish my own business as a freelancer/tech consultant. I also started to write a blog called The Swift Dev, and that's the place where I can share my personal experiences about the Swift programming language. Later on, after working with WordPress, Node.js and Golang for a while, I wanted to try out Vapor, a popular web framework written in Swift, and eventually I wrote a book about the topic called Practical Server-Side Swift. I was using Vapor quite a lot, but I always needed to come up with additional components that were simply missing from the framework. That's the reason why I've created Feather, an open source content management system built on top of Vapor using all the modern language features available. So as you can see, I'm quite a huge fan of server-side Swift development. But why is that? To understand it, let's talk about server-side Swift and Vapor in general. I believe that Swift is great. It's fast, efficient, type-safe, it has a built-in package manager, it is available for multiple platforms, and it has many more amazing tools that we all love. It's a generic-purpose programming language, and it can perform extremely well in a multi-threaded environment. This makes it a perfect candidate for building servers. Vapor is a modern web framework written in Swift. Vapor 4 is the most recent major version, which came out in April 2020. The project has more than 21,000 stars on GitHub. It is definitely the most popular Swift backend library with a growing community. With Vapor, you can create a server written entirely in Swift to render HTML pages or to provide JSON-based API endpoints for others. Clients, such as iOS or Android apps, can consume these endpoints to display data based on the JSON response, or send JSON through HTTP body in order to push new entities to the server's database. This is how a typical RESTful API works in a nutshell. It's JSON over HTTP, and many of us are already familiar with this concept. As an app developer, you might have to transform the return JSON response or fire up multiple requests to get the necessary data for a given screen. This can happen on the server side or the client side. You can come up with a middleware in between the clients and the original server to make the process more easy. Vapor is an ideal candidate for such tasks, and this approach is often called BFF. No, it's not best friends forever, but it means backend for frontend. Tim Condon, who is a member of the server-side Swift workgroup and the Vapor core team, has an excellent talk about this topic on YouTube. One additional benefit of using a BFF is that you don't have to implement the data transformation logic on both platforms for every client, but using such a middleware makes it possible to share the new, more app-friendly service with all the clients. Why should we use Vapor instead of something else? Well, first of all, it's Swift. So the majority of the iOS developer community is already familiar with the language and the related tools. Vapor is not just one library, but it's more like an ecosystem. Vapor has a built-in database abstraction layer called Fluent. It follows the object relational mapping technique, ORM in short, to hide the underlying database-specific details from developers. This means that you don't have to write SQL queries at all. It's like core data on the server side. You can query, alter, migrate databases by writing regular Swift code, which feels great. The best part of Fluent is that it has multiple driver implementations, so you can choose from PostgreSQL, MySQL, MariaDB, SQLite, or MongoDB. Most of these drivers are using SwiftNeo to communicate with the database server asynchronously. This is one of the reasons why most of the functions in Vapor are asynchronous by default. Vapor also has a template engine called Leaf, which can be used to generate dynamic HTML pages. In the past, I was a huge fan of this approach, but Leaf has a very strange syntax and it's not that powerful. There was a branch called Tau, which got reverted by the core team before the fourth major release. That branch had more features, but now that many people tend to use domain-specific languages written in Swift, the entire custom template engine idea feels a bit strange. Anyway, the Vapor ecosystem has many more great things to offer. You can create rich command-line applications using ConsoleKit. It is possible to send push notifications via the APNS library. It has built-in WebSocket and JSON Web Token support. It is possible to use Redis as a caching mechanism, and there are other nice tools and frameworks already compatible with Vapor. Vapor has a comprehensive documentation and the community is very nice and friendly. You should definitely join the official Discord server. That's a great place to ask you questions if you are stuck with something. Before we start talking about the high-level stuff, let me give you a brief explanation about why async await and non-blocking I/O is so important on the server-side Swift world. Vapor is taking advantage of a low-level asynchronous network application framework called SwiftNeo. SwiftNeo was created by Apple to provide a non-blocking utility library for servers and clients. The Neo library is used as a core component in many server-side Swift packages. The Vapor framework has quite often criticized because it was very hard to work with event loop futures and promises. You might ask, what the hell are those? If you are familiar with event loops from Node.js, then you already have the answer. But the main difference is that Vapor can run multiple event loops since Swift supports multi-threading. When your application boots, it will create one event loop per CPU core. Each event loop has exactly one associated thread. Each time a client connects to the server, it will be assigned to one of the event loops. Further actions will happen on the exact same event loop. The event loop is responsible for keeping track each connected client state. Event loops are non-blocking and they utilize futures and promises to handle various actions. Once an action has been finished, a callback will be fired and the result of the future will be fulfilled with a value. Unfortunately, when working with futures, you always have to map the result and you might return with yet another future or promise. This can turn your asynchronous Swift code into the great pyramid of doom when you have to work with multiple callback blocks, and that's really bad for readability. Fortunately, the Vapor team always likes to experiment with the latest Swift language features, and nowadays one of the best features is the new concurrency API. That's right, Vapor 4 already has async await support out of the box. But this is quite new, so you won't find that many tutorials and articles taking advantage of these new APIs. Anyways, if you are using Swift 5.5+, you can simply replace the old future-based function calls with the new async variants. There is a detailed migration guide about this topic on the official Vapor website. Vapor 4 will continue to support both event loop futures and the new concurrency API. It seems like Vapor 5 will drop all the legacy code and it's going to be async await only, but that's still far away. That's where we are right now. Our tools are constantly evolving. I believe Swift's new concurrency API made a huge impact on the server side. Now it is the best time to learn Vapor, but you might have to implement some common things over and over again for every single project if you start it from scratch. Since Vapor is a web framework and not a CMS, many features are missing if you want to create high-level admin interfaces. This is the exact same thing that happened to me when I started to work on my own blog engine. That project evolved into a content management system, and now it is called Feather CMS. Feather is a modern Swift-based content management system powered by Vapor 4. What can you do with Feather? Feather can be used in many different ways. You can create blogs, websites, RESTful APIs, backends for mobile apps, and the list goes on. The modular architecture makes Feather extremely powerful. It is possible to add new features or extend existing ones through event-driven hook functions. After a quick overview, we are going to build a fully working server-side Swift solution using Feather. In order to create Feather, I had to implement and invent quite a lot of new components and libraries. Feather uses the Fluent database layer, but there was no similar solution for storing and managing files. This is the reason why I made an abstract file storage layer from scratch. It is called Liquid, and it follows the same principles as Fluent. There is a local storage driver implementation which you can use to store files on your server instance. I also made an Amazon S3 driver using the Soto library, and you can easily upload files to the cloud as well. It is possible to create even more drivers, but as a starting point, I only needed these two. I also wanted to replace the Leaf template engine with something better, because I struggled with it quite a lot. I tried all the available Swift HTML DSL libraries that I was able to find on GitHub, but I was not satisfied with the currently available options. Many of them were outdated, incomplete, or I simply didn't like the flavor of the DSL. I wanted to have a library which is lightweight and follows the HTML standards. That's the reason why I made a brand new framework called Swift HTML. I was afraid of using a DSL, but now I think it was one of the best decisions that I made, and many people enjoy using Swift HTML. When using Feather, you can encapsulate your business logic into separate modules, and they can communicate with each other through hook functions. It's based on the event-driven architecture, but the great thing about this approach is this. On the long term, it's going to be possible to build and run the core system, and later on, you should be able to download a precompiled module bundle. Feather, then, will be able to dynamically load the new module without the need of rebuilding or restarting anything. Just like you can install a new WordPress plugin, you will be able to extend Feather on the fly. But this is a very long-term goal. Right now, Feather has a sophisticated user management system with access control lists. This means that you can control the access of each component by adding the required permission to a given role. Users can be associated with multiple roles. This allows you to create a flexible configuration based on your business needs and very less about the technical details. Feather also features a fully reusable content management interface to support CRUD operations. The user interface of Feather was created without using additional third-party front-end libraries, so you won't find massive CSS or JavaScript files in the project. This is one of the main reasons why Feather feels so fast. But of course, if you want, you can bring your favorite tool and build your own interfaces. Most of the content validations should happen on the server side. Vapor has great support for validating all kinds of data types, but I also had to extend the system just a little bit because I wanted to be able to provide more information and custom error messages if something goes wrong. That's why I made an asynchronous input validation tool which can be used to validate form fields and REST inputs. In order to make sure that your API endpoints will always work, I wanted to use a declarative unit testing library, so I made one. All of these components are just the foundation blocks. Hopefully, the Feather ecosystem will grow even bigger. Feather also features a basic module generator, so you don't have to manually create database models, lists, forms, controllers, routers, and boring stuff like that. But you can focus more on your business logic and the relations between the required entities. Altering database models is quite crucial if you want to make a proper CMS. That's why Feather has built-in form field components. You can choose from a set of predefined input fields, and you can build your own fields as well. A Feather module can have two main components. The server-side Swift package contains the database models, the migration scripts, the controllers, the routing mechanism, and some other stuff. The shared module interface is all about reusing data transfer objects and sharing them with your client apps. The Feather core library follows this exact same approach, and every single data transfer object is part of the Feather API library, which you can use both on the client and the server side. Feather is an API-oriented framework, which means that you can define your entire communication layer using Swift. Everything is built around this principle, and a good API is maybe the most important thing if you want to build an app. Clients usually prefer to work with JSON-based RESTful endpoints, but what if there was an SDK that you could use and every single data transfer object that you will ever need could be part of this library? Well, Feather tries to solve this issue with the Feather Client SDK. Your client apps will be able to use this lightweight component to make type-safe network calls without the need of manually constructing HTTP requests ever. As you can see, Feather is a component-based tool, and we are working hard to create the best developer experience if it comes to application development. That's why we are going to provide libraries both for Swift and Kotlin developers. I believe in native apps, and that's the reason why I want to turn Feather into a full-stack native solution. Swift on the server, iOS, macOS apps written all in Swift, and Android apps using Feather libraries and Kotlin. I know, this is quite an ambitious goal, but as I mentioned it before, it's a multi-year long-term plan. My short-term goal for Feather CMS is quite simple. I just want everyone to try it out, play with it, build an API using it, and send me some feedback. I think that you're going to like what you see, even though the project is still a work in progress. Once you see how easy it is to create a RESTful API or an admin interface for your database model, you will fall in love with Feather too. Are you ready to see how it works in practice? Alright, let's get started. We should be able to download Feather from GitHub. You should go to github.com/feathercms/feather and get the source files by using the code button. You can download a zip file, or you can clone the entire repository using the URL. I'm going to clone that. Alright, now we can change the directory and move into the Feather directory using the cd command. Before we could start using the system, we have to define a custom environment for Feather. This is required because Feather is going to look for some additional resources such as the database file and some public assets, and the system needs to know which directory use as a base directory to look up those files. It's really easy to create a new environment. You just have to run make env. This will create a new .env.development file which contains environmental variables. As you can see, the Feather work directory is now equal with this current working directory. Now we are ready to run the system. I'm going to use Swift run to fire up the server. We could use Xcode, but this time I would like to show you how to make it work using the command line. We are going to change to Xcode later on. The Swift run command will fetch the required dependencies, and after everything is there, it's gonna compile the entire package and run the server. This might take some time. As you can see, the build is now ready and we can access our server on this URL. I'm going to copy paste it to my browser. We can verify that Feather is working, and before we could start using the CMS, we still have to run the install process. During the installation, the system will create all the required database tables by running the migrations. You can start the installation by pressing this button. The next step is to create a root user. This user will have access to everything, so be careful when you pick your password. Let's create a user. Alright, the next step will ask you if you would like to install some sample content for the blog module. This module is enabled by default if you clone the repository from GitHub, because we haven't really touched the configuration file just yet. I'm fine with that. Press the next button to proceed. Now the setup is completed and we can start using our site. Alright, as you can see, it's a really basic website. On the top we have our menu. This is a welcome message, and sorry about the lorem ipsum, but I quite like it to use as a placeholder text. Anyway, in the footer we are able to log in with our root user account. Let's do that real quick. Alright, now we are logged in, and if we press the admin link, we can see the dashboard. On the dashboard there are many cards with links that will take you to different areas of the admin interface. For example, we can see some analytics here. You can always go back to the dashboard by clicking the feather icon on the top left corner. Alright, so the admin dashboard has quite a lot of functionalities, but this time I would like to focus on the CRUD features. This means listing models, creating models, updating and deleting models. For example, or blog posts. If you click on the blog posts, you will get a list of the available posts. This list is a reusable component that you can use for to display your own data models, which is quite handy. You can also create a new one by pressing the create button, which will take you to a form view. Feather has built-in font field components such as an image uploader, single-line input fields, multi-line input fields, content fields, pickers for categories, or all sorts of relations. Okay, let's go back to the list. As you can see, we also have an update action here on the top right side of the screen, and you can also delete an entity straight from the list view. If we press the update button, we can see quite a similar form view as we saw earlier when I clicked the create button. This is actually called an editor, and the same editor is reused for both the create and the update screen, which is quite handy. I'm going to show you later on how to make one. On the top of the screen we can see 3 links. You can also switch to the details view of the post. Here you can see all the post details. Alright, you can also preview the post by using the public URL. This will take you back to the site, and you can also edit the metadata of the post. In Feather, we use metadata to describe public contents. For example, you can specify the slug, aka the public URL for given entity. You can add some additional meta tag information, which you will see when you share your content on social media. This can be an image, a title, a short excerpt, and you can also manage the status of your content and some other stuff, but we don't want to get too much into the details this time. You can always go back to your reference type by clicking the reference button. Alright, and if you go down to the update screen, you will see a delete button where you can delete your post, but I don't want to do that this time. Okay, now let's go back to the dashboard just a little bit. I'm going to create a new user account to show you how to manage access control lists. Alright, I'm inside the user accounts menu. Let's create a new user. I'm going to use user@feathercms.com as a username and user1 as a password. It won't be a root user, so I won't select the has root access flag, but it will have the editor's role. Let's save it. That's it. Now we have a new user. We can actually log in with that user using a private browsing window. Alright, sign in, user add user 1. And as you can see, if I scroll down, there's no admin link here. This is because editors can't access the admin interface just yet, but we are going to fix that. Now I'm logged in with my root user, and if I go back to the user module, I can alter the roles, and if I press the update button next to the editor, then I can specify what kind of access or permissions does this role have. Alright, I'm going to give them admin permission, and I'm also going to allow to reach and access the blog module, and these users will be able to list the blog posts. Scroll down, we can save the form, and now if I go back to the regular user account with the editor role and refresh the screen, I'm going to be able to see the admin button. On the dashboard, for this user, only the blog post list is available. If I click it, you can see that there is no create button, and the update and delete actions are also missing. Plus, I cannot click the row, it's not going to take me to the post detail screen. If I try to manually enter the create URL here, I'm going to get a forbidden message. That's fine, because the user has no access to create a new post. Alright, let's go back, edit the role, and give editors some other permissions. For example, I want to make them to be able to create or update posts. And that's it. I'm going to press Command S, that will save the form, and refresh the other browser window. Now, as you can see, this user has access to create a new blog post. If I go back to the list, the update action is already there. That's how you can manage user permissions through roles. And the good thing about this is if you add the API prefix to your URL before the admin path component, you will be able to access the post via a JSON-based API endpoint. Everything what's there on the admin interface is also everything that we have an interface for works through API as well. So the CRUD operations also work, and you can write your own clients or interfaces to manage your entities. These endpoints are protected by default, so they are not accessible to everyone, but you have to log in with your user account. And now, since we are running in development mode, the user session authenticator will take care of everything else, so that's why we are able to see this list. That's how access control works in Feather. Alright, now we should create a new module, and we should use Xcode just a little bit. I'm going to go back to the terminal and open the project folder. Now, if you double click the package.swift file, you will be able to open the project using Xcode. Xcode will first fetch all the dependencies again, but fortunately it's using a local cache, so it's a bit faster. Alright, all the dependencies are there, you can see them on the left side, and you can also take a look at the package.swift file where all the dependencies are listed. That's how you can configure your own Feather instance. For example, I can disable the blog module here, but we don't want to do that this time. Alright, in order to run Feather from Xcode, you have to edit the scheme. We have to use a custom working directory because Vapor is gonna look up our files using this directory, and Xcode will place the executable under the derivative data folder by default, and that's not gonna work for us. We can also hide some additional log levels by using an argument. Alright, that's it. And yeah, we can run our instance. The build process is gonna take a while. Okay, Feather is now running again. As you can see, the dashboard is still working. Now, if we go back to the project, we can see that all the public files are located under the public folder. This means CSS files, JavaScript, and images, everything what's publicly accessible is inside this folder. The resources directory contains basic configuration file for Feather, and since we're using an SQLite database, the database file is also located here. These files are not publicly accessible. Under the sources directory, we have the Feather run target, and the main configuration file will set up all the modules that we have in our dependency. You can place your own modules under the modules directory. We are going to create one, and we are not going to manually make a new module, but we are going to use the Feather client to generate one. In order to generate a new Feather module, we can use the module generator. We can run that by running the swift run feathercli generate module command. This will ask you for the name of the module. We should create a simple API for storing our favorite pet animals. So the module name should be pet. Always use the singular version here. And we are going to use an animals table to store our favorite animals. Alright, we definitely want to name them. So we can add the name property field here. That's gonna be a string type. It's gonna be required. We would like to be able to search and look up pets by name. And we would like to order them by name. It can be a single input field. Yes, we would like to add one more property because I've got some nice images. So the name of the property can be image. That's also gonna be a string type since we are going to store the image URL in the database. But it's not gonna be required, and we don't care about searching and ordering this time. And the image field type is 4. So yes, we are done. We don't want to add the new property, and we don't want to add a new model. Now I'm going to place this module into my home folder. That's it. It is now generated. And if I go there, here we go. We've got a pet and the pet API folder. I'm going to place that under the Feather directory, sources, Feather, and modules. There we go. This new module is already available for our project. We still have to enable it by calling the pet builder instance, which is just a builder that you can use to create a new module instance. Now, if we run the project again, we should be able to see a new card containing our pets. That's it. This is a brand new module generated via the module generator. And here we can create an animal. As you can see, we have specified a name field for the property and an image field. Let's create a new animal called Lucky. Alright. I'm going to save it. And there we are. As you can see, if we go to the update, the image already appeared here, but in the details, we don't have the image. This is because we sometimes have to do some additional work, and we can add a new image field under the description by altering our admin controller. It's really easy to do. Every controller is under the controllers folder, so just look at that. And there's a detail fields method that you can alter. We can add a new field simply calling the init method. It's gonna be image, and it's gonna use the image value of the model. The label is auto-generated from the key, so we don't need that. And the type is gonna be image this time. That's it. Now if you run the server again, the image should be there under the details. That's it. Okay. We still have one issue with generated module. As you can see, when you want to delete an animal, the identifier won't give you that much hint. So I'm going to change that real quick. Here under the delete info, we can change the UUID string into a name. And now if we run the project again, that's much better. Alright. You can also add new fields to the list. You can configure your list, specify what kind of fields you would like to be allowed to order by and search. And because this is an API-oriented framework, we will get an API for free this time. And the best part is that since this module can be separated into two parts, we also have data transfer objects. And if you take a look at this, we have separate objects for every single CRUD operation. For example, we have one for the list, the details, one for creating objects, one for updating objects, and for the patch endpoint as well. So that's how you can create a new module for Feather. It's really easy, it's really convenient. You can use the generator and you only have to take care of your relations and business logics, and you don't have to deal that much with user permission control or boring stuff like that. Before we finish this session, I just want to show you a couple of more things. First of all, I'm going to show you how to log in via a curl request using the API. As you can see, you can send a post request to the API/login endpoint using curl, and you also have to provide your email and password address as a JSON string using the body. I'm going to copy paste the snippet, and the response is going to be your user account details, including a token value that you can use as an authorization token. It's a bearer token, and this time we are going to create a new animal by sending a post request to the pet/animals endpoint. It's actually API/admin/pet/animals, and inside the data we are going to send the name of the animal. Let's try that out, and that's it. We have just created a new animal called Polly, and we can get back the list of animals, but first I'm going to try this with an invalid token. And the response says that I'm not authenticated yet. So let's grab a valid token, use that one, and send the same request again. That's it. As you can see, it contains the list of animals, but there is one minor issue with this response. Since Liquid uses keys to identify files, we only get back the image as a key. That's not good, so let's fix that real quick. We would like to return the whole URL for the image. Our API layer is controlled by the API controller, so let's open that file, and inside the list output and the detail output we can alter the returned list object and simply resolve the image key. This result method is also provided by Feather, and now if we run the server again and perform the exact same request, we should see that the whole image URL is now being returned. And we can verify using our browser that it's actually a picture of our favorite animal. Alright, and if I go back to the admin interface, I can also see that here is our new animal called Polly, and we can also manage it through the admin dashboard. That's it. That's how Feather works. As you can see, pretty much you can manage your entities and models using the admin dashboard and the API using tokens, and you can create your own clients as well. You can also share all the data transfer objects, and in the future, hopefully, there's gonna be a native SDK both for Android and iOS. I suppose this is a great time to learn more about server-side Swift development, and Feather can help you a lot with this because it's going to provide all the required components, so you don't have to worry too much about user authentication or managing user roles or permissions, but you can focus a lot more on your data structure and your business goals, and you can define the relations that you want to have, and that's it. Feather will do the rest for you. I hope you enjoyed my talk. If you want to learn more about server-side Swift development, you should definitely take a look at my blog. It's called The Swift Dev, and you can also help me by purchasing my book that's called Practical Server-Side Swift, and it's available on Gumroad. If you have any questions, feel free to reach me out on Twitter, and you should definitely join the official Vapor Discord server. I'm also there, so feel free to contact me anytime if you have questions. I hope you enjoyed my talk. That's it. See you soon. Bye.
Hey everyone, good evening. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. We have a couple of questions and I made some notes about them, so let me answer them real quick. The first question was, what is the hardest part of creating a CMS? What surprised you? Actually, the hardest part of creating a CMS was to come up with the form management and the reusable component system. That was pretty tough and I struggled it quite a lot. I've spent 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks until I came up with the current final solution, and I really like the final result. It's a bit inspired by Swift UI, so if you are familiar with that, forms will be very easy for you in Feather. Yeah, that was the most difficult part for me. The second question was, what are the deployment options and hosting for server-side Swift? This was asked by Manuel in the Meetup channel. So there are plenty of options. You can use Amazon AC2 instances. You can also deploy Vapor apps and Feather to Heroku, or you can use DigitalOcean servers, whatever you feel the best. It's totally up to you. You can run Swift on the server in any instance. You just need Swift. So if your Linux server can run it, then you're good to go. It's really easy to configure everything. I have a detailed tutorial on the Feather's wiki page on GitHub. You can take a look at that. You will need Nginx and a few more components, but it's not that hard. So yeah, you can use anything to host server-side Swift apps and Feather. Maybe in the future, I'm going to launch something like Feather in the cloud to speed up the process and make it more user-friendly, but I don't know. That's just an idea. Okay, the third question was, what are the server hardware requirements for the optimal performance and how much it is memory/resources demanding comparing with other frameworks? This is a great question. And I did some benchmarks, and Swift Neo performs extremely well. I was able to serve more than 1 million requests per sec, and that's pretty huge. So that's great. Vapor, unfortunately, can handle a bit less requests. It was like 300,000 per second. I don't have the exact number, but still it was pretty impressive, especially if it comes to memory usage. Feather and Vapor both allocates about 20 megabytes of memory, so that's a constant number, and usually you don't end up using hundreds of megabytes of RAM, so that's also great. And of course, the CPU requirements all depends on the incoming requests. So that's why I like server-side Swift, because it's really easy to host. You don't need powerful machine that you can run on older devices as well. And this will be better with M1 chips. As you might know, you can host your server on Mac Minis through Amazon, and the M1 chip is extremely powerful, so I can highly recommend that. Yeah, that's it. That's how you can host Feather and Vapor apps and all kinds of server-side Swift applications. You can also use Amazon Lambda to set up everything as a serverless solution, but that's another topic. And I think I should stop here because I could talk all day about hosting solutions as well. So yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed my presentation, and please check out my blog and my book. My blog is theswiftdev.com and my book is called Practical Server-Side Swift. It's available on Gumroad, and I also have a special discount for this event. So thanks again for watching. Talk to you soon. See you soon. Bye.